Welcome to the Father on Purpose podcast, featuring author and ministry leader Kent Evans and business executive and military veteran Lawson Brown. This is a show for you, Dad. You want to be a godly and intentional father. Unfortunately, you've turned to these two knuckleheads for help. Let us know how that works out for you. Before we begin, remember this: you are not a father on accident. So go be a father on purpose. Please welcome your hosts, Kent and Lawson.
Lawson, what is going down? Today,
how you doing, brother?
We're going to talk about gratitude. Gratitude.
Uh-oh.
Does that sound like a threatening conversation, Lawson?
Right. No, it's like something we're not always good at.
No, that's true, man. Most men and dads, we're way better at like griping. Other words that start with GR.
Right.
Griping, grousing. I can't think of any other GR words besides grape. And that doesn't really apply. We're going to talk about gratitude for a couple reasons. One, you just had it on your mind and heart last time we talked about show prep. You're like, man, we need to do something on gratitude. And then you came up with, I think, quite a clever way for us to talk about gratitude and at the same time celebrate a momentous milestone in the history of the Father on Purpose podcast. What is that, Lawson?
Yeah. And I do think not just today, but I think there's something here as far as gratitude. You know, I've wondered a couple of things. Where can we focus? What's important to guys? You know, we want this to be valuable and encouraging to other fathers out there, just in general, but also there's a whole manhood journey, tons of resources. But one in particular, the Anger-Free Dad, is because a lot of guys struggle with anger. And so I wonder if, in combination with that thought, if gratitude could be like an extinguishment of anger. It's really hard to be both. You know, it's hard to be both grateful and angry. And so maybe an antidote to some of that could be that we dig in deeper, not just today, but there are a lot of things to be grateful for. In particular today, because we've been kind of rolling around in this thought, I've been reminded lately how grateful I am to be a father because of this podcast. And, you know, it's been about a year now as we record today, our 52nd episode. And I know, right? Everybody's applauding.
Hunter, can you drop in some kind of cheesy sound effect right there? Just, I don't know, a horn blowing, some kind of one of those rattles like at New Year's Eve.
We should have been prepared. We're not usually prepared.
I see a pinwheel over there. One of my kids has a pinwheel, but those don't make noise. They just spin around in circles.
But, you know, it's been an opportunity for me to reflect. And we've been talking about doing something for years and years and years, tens of years. And, you know, it finally came to be this. And dude, I'm just super stoked that we get to be together and do this. And let you know what I thought of. Maybe we just break down some of the things that while we have been reflecting on gratitude, specifically now we've been doing this for a year. How has hopefully this podcast, our conversations and our guest speakers and our topics have been helpful to other guys. They've been beneficial to other people. And for me in particular, I think I needed it. I needed it more than I realized it.
But let's be honest. I don't really care if anybody gets blessed by this except me. Okay. I'm a bit of a narcissistic gratitude person.
How has this helped me?
How does Kent win? I think that's the question we're all trying to answer. Get us kicked off, man. Here's what we're going to do. We listed 9 ways that we are grateful. And dads, for real, part of the reason we wanted to do this is as an exercise in like going first. It's like going off the high dive, right? We say, oh, hey, you shouldn't be afraid of this high dive. Well, then fine, you jump off first. And what Lawson and I are going to do is walk through this idea of gratitude because a lot of us need to see it as an example in front of us. Like, we're going to go first because, Dad, you probably need to be more grateful for your wife. You probably need to be more grateful for your children. You probably need to be more grateful for your job, or you probably don't suffer from excess gratitude disease. Like, you probably don't suffer from that. Quite the opposite. You might suffer from like excess complaining disorder and griping and what you don't got and what you haven't had yet. So part of the reason we're going through it this way is because we want to try to set the example and have a little fun, as we always like to do. What's the first thing that came to mind for you, Lawson? Number one, and we could only think of 9, and maybe that's because we just don't have enough gratitude. Like, we couldn't come up with 10.
Yeah, you can't come up with 10.
Nah, we just
Yeah.
9, dude, 9. I fell across the finish line at 9. That's the best I could do. Get us kicked off.
So Ephesians 5:20 says, give thanks always and for everything to God. And then Psalm 50:23, the one who offers thanksgiving as his sacrifice glorifies me. So my first one is, what has God shown himself to be for me over the decades as a parent? Because we are getting together every week to talk about fatherhood and to dig in deeper on things that God is trying to teach and tell us that we get to then turn around and reiterate and translate in our own words. It's made me personally think, over the decades as a parent, the reminder of the importance that God places on fathers. And the reason I say that's important to me is because our society nowadays is de-emphasizing in a strong way the importance of fathers. It's dumbing us down. It is taking pot shots. It's making us in rom-coms look like idiots, look like we're kind of there, but really we're just bumbling around. And because we've been getting together every week and talking about this, and God has used this as a tool in my own life to think about, why is fatherhood important? And, not only what are the stats, what is the data, but what does that mean? How does it look? What does he model for us as our father that we can then turn around and do in our own families with our own children? So that's my number one.
Number one. Yeah. If I was talking with a guy today at lunch who's not a dad, but ironically, he's been asked to speak at a church on Father's Day. And he was feeling a little bit like, well, what do I have to say? And I said, the bottom line is God the Father is our example of fatherhood. And there's a ton of examples throughout scripture. Well, Nehemiah is one. We did a whole book on it, of a guy who we don't even know he was a dad, but he was gifted with the principles of what a father should look like. And to that point you were just making, if God hadn't shown us, we wouldn't know a thing about fatherhood, right? He is the example. The first one that I came up with, this will be number 2 on the list. My wife has been a constant source of feedback and encouragement and ideas ever since we launched the podcast. And she listens to it. She goes to the YMCA and works out a couple days a week. And we are her number 1 listening show. Thank God.
Hello, April.
Yeah. Hello,
Thank
April.
you. We love you.
Yeah. We climbed above some other shows in her ranking, but she's been awesome because it creates conversation for us. She'll be like, hey, that thing Lawson said on the podcast was really dumb. And then, no, she never says that. She actually usually says, you're so dumb. She's been awesome. And it's just been like anything else. If you walk through a Bible study with your wife, or you guys are going through a challenge or anything you're doing that's shared, you have more conversation around the table and so forth. And so she and I've had a ton of great conversation, and she actually has been very complimentary of our podcast. And she's a critical consumer. Like, she actually is a discerning mind. And so if we get her stamp of approval, baby, it matters.
Right. Yeah. I love that. I appreciate that encouragement, April. Just listening to you just then, I wonder, there's obviously tons of dads listening, but I do wonder, I wonder if they've passed it on to their wives, and hopefully their own marriages have been enriched to some degree, like ours have. All right. Number 3, that's similar to you. It's given me new opportunities to talk about fatherhood and parenting. And I've mentioned this before. Both my daughters are in their early 20s. Both of them still, for the moment now, have moved back in and live with us. And they do several things outside of some online schooling, but they also are nannying down here where we live in 2 or 3 separate households. And it's not just a babysit periodically 1 or 2 nights a week for somebody so they can have a date night. This is like 8 to 5 in some of these families, and they have multiple kids. And so not only are we talking, like, it's nothing for me to, hey, we talked about so-and-so on an episode, or we got a topic coming up. What do you guys think? Or what's been important to you? And just kind of bounce ideas off of them. But now it's been also interesting to wrap into my own thought process, how they are experiencing parenthood, specifically fathers of some of the families that they're interacting with all throughout each week. It's given them a really cool, different perspective than I think, call it this time last year, they would have said, here's my idea of parenting and what families look like. They've been immersed in 2 or 3 different families. And so God has shown us some things and enabled us, not just through this podcast, but also because of our family time, to dig in deeper to some of the things that we do and don't do, good and not good. So it's been a neat way that I wouldn't have told you a year ago was going to be a byproduct of getting to do this.
Yeah. Well, and secretly, we're planting the seed for them to know the right guy when he comes along, right? Just go listen, ladies, go listen to all of those past episodes. And if the guy you're dating doesn't look like what basically Lawson or me,
You're probably you are such a fool.
You're probably dating the wrong guy. Speaking of other guys, number 4, we've noticed a lot of other guys, well, specifically me, because I live in Louisville and I work basically at the nearest coffee shop, or I'm in my basement recording a podcast episode. Those are the 2 places where I am most of the time. And I'll have folks come up to me and just say, "Hey man, I heard the podcast this week. That was a really good thing that Lawson said." That's what I get all the time in public. And I just go, I'm mad at them. But I do get a number of guys who pop in and bump into me and say great things about the show. In fact, what has been a blast is there is a guy that I'm meeting with later this week by Zoom. His name is Andrew. Andrew, if you're out there, shout out to you. He has decided he wants to help us by launching a Facebook group to talk specifically about the topics that we bring up on the podcast. And so if we do that, it'll be kind of volunteer-led, volunteer-driven, and it'll be because of his brainchild and his excitement. So one of the things I've loved about doing the podcast is it's helped us continue to find those dads out there who care about, being godly fathers, not the perfect dads, not the dads who have it all together, but the dads who are striving and trying and leaning on God. We've met some really, really cool people through the podcast, and I'm super grateful for those guys. Andrew in particular. Thanks, buddy.
Yeah. It's father on purpose. It's with a purpose. It's not about being perfect.
That's Number 5. Our new line. You are not a father on perfect. So go. Wait a minute. Doesn't make any sense.
Right. On perfect. There's a YouTube. Oh, Dude Perfect.
Dude
you ever
Perfect.
watch
They're
those
great.
guys?
Oh, they're great,
they're so great. LB, number 5. It's helped me deal with some realities of the relationship that I had with my own father, especially in his last few years where I was together with him a lot because he was so sick and, had to help take care of him in their home. Recalling him since his death a few years ago has brought him into my life in a different light while we are going through certain episode conversations. Whether I talk about it or not, it's something that like we hear from other guys. And in fact, what I thought was cool, including Eric Ballard, every guest speaker that's been on the show has talked about their own father in some way. And I've learned things about not them necessarily as a person and their particular father, but listening to them talk about their dad has made me think about my own dad. And so I'm curious, hopefully, to the guys out there in the audience have also experienced something where maybe in our learning, we see that there were times either in the moment or even since then where we could have given or should have given our own father a pass. Like we are not getting it all right all the time, and neither did they. And so there's things to learn from that, and I have. So it's been good about, helping me with my own dad.
That's a good word. As my boys have gotten older and I've seen some of the indelible impressions I've left upon them. Some have been good. I've been okay with some. Some have been bad. Some have been kind of rough. And you watch yourself get lived out sometimes through your children and think, eesh, man, I probably contributed to a lot of that.
Yeah, they do something and you're like, oh,
right.
that
looks a lot like me.
That was a lot like me.
And so looking back with our own dad, sometimes we were probably too harsh of a judge for sure. Lawson, number 6, maybe my personal favorite on this list.
Yeah, I have learned a lot from this.
Yes, you have. It's
you
about time.
You even leaned over into your microphone. Yes, you have.
Hey, Dad, sometimes you need weekly encouragement on your father journey. That's why we built a community of men that are basically the Navy SEALs of godly fatherhood. They are all located at fatheronpurpose.org. That's fatheronpurpose.org. Now, that is a monthly subscription of just 11 measly US dollars. And when you join that community, you will get action items that are brief and biblical, and you can put into play right away. Every week, we release a dad mission video that is a short devo based on the Bible with an action item mission at the end, super practical. And plus, as a bonus, when you dive in, you get digital courses, ebooks, all kinds of other resources, not to mention you're connected with dozens of other godly dads who are walking through the same issues you're walking through. And that community is very rich and vibrant. Come check it out today at fatheronpurpose.org. That's fatheronpurpose.org.
The content, dude, you and the team have done such a great job with the Manhood Journey book, the Bring Your Hammer book, online resources, Mountain Monday, the Father on Purpose groups. And so having that as a place to go for content, I wouldn't have done that otherwise. In fact, the genesis of my understanding of what you were going to go do with Manhood Journey, I remember back at Southeast, was you folding out this big paper map with course that leads from here to there. And there were different learnings that would happen in different places. And I was like, there it is. I'm like, dude, this is really super cool, but is this enough for you to leave your job? And wow, you are going out on faith here, bro. And I'm so glad you did, because what that initial map thing turned into has been good for a whole lot of dudes. And having this task at hand of offering valuable, thoughtful content to other dads has made me go deeper into the Manhood Journey material that I wouldn't have done otherwise. So I encourage other dudes, if this is your only, if the podcast 30 minutes, every week is your only interaction with the ministry, there's a whole lot more. And so I'd encourage you to go to the website and dig in.
Well, and what's interesting is, to your point, back in the day when I was just kind of like, me and Tom and Chad were the three guys who and Jeff, we started the idea and we were kicking this around. And so a lot of the original early stuff, what came from one of the three or four of us, right? It was like the source group. Nowadays, you fast forward 11 years from the time we wrote this idea up on a whiteboard, and I'm only responsible for maybe 25% of the content around here. Maybe, I haven't written a blog in years. I edit, I keep an eye on them. Our Monday newsletter, Mountain Monday, if you haven't signed up for that, go sign up. It's full of tips and all kinds of things, but I'm only involved in maybe half of that. This podcast, I only do the great half of the podcast. Oh, I mean, you're here too, Lawson. That's great. Your half is awesome. Super awesome. And over time, what we've seen is, as I've done less and less of the content, our audience has grown bigger and bigger. And I think there's a correlation there. It's been a blast to watch it happen. And so, quick side note, for any of those guys, any dad listening, and you have this urge, this either entrepreneurial urge or ministerial kind of urge, and you feel like God is pushing you in a certain direction, go give it a try, man. Look one step at a time to see if God continues to open the doors. I told a friend of mine one time, it's almost like he plants little mini burning bushes all along the way so that I don't lose sight of the next one. And very little of what we're doing today, I envisioned 11 years ago. In fact, probably almost none of what we're doing today was on the radar. We just kept trying to do the next thing, and God has continued to open door after door. And so him giving us the opportunity for you and I to work together has been a huge blast. So I feel like this is free for me, because you're a great partner in all this. And so thanks for that. But man, most of our resources are created by actual trained professionals, not me. Number 7, I have really enjoyed the opportunity to speak with some of our guest speakers. And I don't say some like some I didn't enjoy. We just haven't had all that many. We've had maybe half a dozen guests on the show over the last year. You mentioned Eric Ballard, co-author of the book, Bring Your Hammer with Me. We've had Bob Russell. We've had Dr. Ken Blanchard. We've had Chip Ingram, Stephen Kendrick. We've had Eric Goss at Minnow TV. And those guys have all contributed significantly to my own kind of fatherhood matrix. Just some of the things that they said. I remember the shot that Chip Ingram took at me, which was hilarious on that show. If you go back, listen to the Chip Ingram show, early out of the gate, he takes a good swipe at me. That was funny. So did Bob Russell. I appreciate them kicking me around a little bit. That was hilarious. But they all had really interesting insights for dads. And it's funny because you and I know this, Lawson. We just get to talk with these like legends about fatherhood. It's a blast. And oh, by the way, we turn on a microphone and capture it for some other guys to hear. But number one and number two beneficiaries in those conversations are probably you and me. And I've been really thrilled to have had some of those guests on each week. And I do want to say, all kidding around, I like to kid a lot, mainly because I don't know what to do with all of my pent up emotional drama. So I just kid it away. But secondly, kidding aside, being with you every week or every couple of weeks when we actually record has been one of the biggest blessings in all of this. I think that as I look back over our friendship that probably now spans, 20 years or something, it's always been a blessing to hang out with you. And I try hard not to take for granted these relationships God has brought into my life. Even Hunter, who does our post-production on the show, Hunter's a huge, huge asset and friend to the ministry and does a lot of great work. And so I'm really fortunate to get to work alongside guys like you and Hunter. It's been a blast.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. I wrote for that too. That's basically number 8. Before you went into ministry, we got to do periodically some things together. And I couldn't wait for that mark to hit on the calendar to come to life, and get to see you in person. This has been great. Something I grabbed off of Open Bible about gratitude was when Paul wrote to Ephesus. So Ephesians 1:16-18. It's a little long. I'll read it quick. He's saying to them, and that's what I'm telling you, I do not cease to give thanks for you, remembering you in my prayers, that the God of our Lord Jesus, the Father of glory, may give you a spirit of wisdom and of revelation in the knowledge of him, having the eyes of your heart enlightened, that you may know what is the hope to which he has called you, what are the riches of his glorious inheritance in the saints. And so me to you, dude, you are a blessing in my life. I pray that this podcast is a blessing to other guys, and that what I just read is to you out there listening, doing whatever you're out there doing, listening to your podcast. I don't cease giving thanks for you, remembering you in my prayers, that you will know that Jesus Christ is the hope that he has called us to.
That's a great verse, man. And just as a sideline, so many dads have told us that they really wish they could study and understand the Bible better. And maybe one day Lawson will just do a whole series on it, or we'll at least share some of our favorite books or resources for how to do that. That verse, that Ephesians verse, in verse 17, there's a word there that I just draw out. This is like free for the dad listening as bonus content. When you're reading through scripture, every now and then you'll see the word that, or you'll see the word so that. And so it's like a fulcrum. It's like a seesaw, where in the middle, that's the so that, and you got something on the left and something on the right. And it's basically, what did God do? And then why did he do it? What did God do and why did he do it? And so the so that, or the that in the middle, and it even says right here, so Paul says, I don't cease to give thanks for you, remembering you in my prayers. So Paul's saying, I'm praying for you all the time, and I'm grateful for you. And then it says that the God of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of glory, may give you the spirit of wisdom and of revelation in the knowledge of him. So one of the things Paul prays for the believers as he's writing this letter to the Ephesians is he says, man, I pray and give thanks so that God will give you even more wisdom and knowledge of who he is. And that's one of the prayers really that I have for any dad listening to the show, is that we are grateful for dads listening. We're grateful for dads who email us and text us and send us notes on social, and for dads who share the show with their buddies. We're grateful for you. And we ask that God gives them wisdom and revelation in the knowledge of God, not just like a better job or better kids or better wife, but that you would know God even better. So I'll wrap up our list, and then you can have like maybe the final word, Lawson. But number 9, one of the best things about doing a podcast, and one of my biggest points of gratitude, is I get to be what I call a pod snob. It's a pod snob. And basically what it is it's like anyone who's got a podcast, they can act like a total snobby, like elitist. It's great, man. So someone will bring something.
This is the real reason.
This is it. If you want to know Kent's heart, here it is. someone will say something like, oh, I wish I could figure out thing X as a dad. And then I just go, well, we covered that on episode 27 of our podcast. Maybe you should tune in occasionally. It's awesome. I mean, there's nothing quite like having a podcast and being able to act like you actually know what you're talking about. It's absolutely fantastic. I'm just kidding. It is fun though to have an outlet, because what I find now is I find myself going through life and occasionally seeing something happen as a dad. And I'll be like, ooh. And then that ends up over in our Airtable database of show notes and show episodes. We got a long list of possible episode ideas that we may or may not get to, because just now that we have the podcast rolling, my antenna is up in a different way than it was before. But Lawson, man, thank you for today. Thanks for walking through some of our gratitude for the podcast. Let me kind of wrap with asking you a question. I want you to react to something. We talked at the top of this episode about almost like the opposite of gratitude. Is it anger? Is it discontentment? What are some things that when you're not grateful, you see these in someone's life? And ironically, this came up the other day out on our deck. We were having dinner and we had 4/5 of our boys home, and our 2 older boys were talking about not wanting to become disgruntled, grumpy old people. And April and I were saying, hey man, we're both in our early 50s. And April and I were saying, look, if we become those people who become like the gripers, everything's wrong, this world's going to hell in a handbasket, the music's too loud, the food's not good enough, the preaching isn't biblical enough or whatever, and we become those type of people, you guys, we told our older boys, you have our permission now to call us on the carpet when that happens. And please do not let us become the griping old people. And I think it comes right back to this topic we're on today, which is gratitude. What are some things that you think put you on the spot a little bit, Lawson? What are some things that you think, if you have a heart of gratitude, what are some other things that are not present in your life in a good way because you are a grateful person? So if the degree to which you're more grateful is probably the degree to which other things are less evident in your life, what are 1 or 2 things? We talked a little bit about contentment, maybe less anger. What have you noticed either in your own life or the lives of people that you know who tend to be grateful people? Maybe we think about that 65 to 75 to 85-year-old person we know who isn't that kind of crotchety old lady or old guy who's just, really negative. We know some of those positive people. What do you think is evident in their life when gratitude is present? What else is present, or what's not there that we wish weren't there? What are some thoughts as you kind of land the plane for us today?
Yeah, I'm glad we did this. It helped ground me a bit, and it also solidified my take that we need to do a kind of mini series on gratitude. If nothing else, I think it'll be something that is kind of counterculture. Culture says get more, do more, be better, be more important. Gratitude says be content with what you have. Gratitude says don't complain about what you don't have. Gratitude says you're enough, and what the world is telling you that you should be more of is not true. You just can't hold tight to gratitude and let negativity in. If you're holding as tight as you can to gratitude, and I think about my grandmother, she's someone who I just felt died as an angel. She was just a wonderful lady and didn't gripe and didn't complain and was just always thankful and had a heart for contentment. I saw that in Ken Blanchard. I saw it in Bob Russell. Even things that they mentioned that they had struggled with over their life, they've rested in the fact that God's in control and that it's not all up to them, and for them to be thankful with what God gifts them with, and for what he knows we'll need, he will provide. So I think let's break down this whole gratitude thing a little bit more. I think we could all use it in our life. And so let's get serious about that. And for you guys out there listening, thank you. I am grateful for you. I'm grateful for every one of you guys. I especially want to thank the handful that have given us email content or gone onto the website and left us a message. That's very encouraging. Leaving reviews, all that sort of thing But I just love the fact that there are thousands and thousands of dudes that would give of their time to listen to us two idiots ramble around and try to make sense of this crazy world and this crazy gift that we've been given to be as godly of a dad as we can. So keep it up, fellas, and we'll see you next time.
Yep, Hunter. I was just checking, Lawson, with Hunter before we went on the air today, that I think our total downloads as of the first year is right around 11 or 12,000. It's in that range. And so, dads, thanks a ton for listening in, and thanks for sharing the show. Thanks for letting guys know and texting it to them or sharing it on social. We are honored to have done this for one whole full year, and we're just getting started. Our best content is yet to come, even though we have no idea what that's going to be. It's going to be awesome, I'm sure. Thanks a lot, Lawson, for your friendship for the first year of the podcast. And dads, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week. Hey, Dad, thank you for listening to today's show. If you found this episode helpful, remember, you can get all the content and show notes at manhoodjourney.org/podcast. And if you really liked it, please consider doing 3 things. Number 1, share this podcast with someone. You can hit the share button in your app, wherever you listen to podcasts, or just call a person up. Tell them to listen in. Number 2, subscribe to this podcast so you get episodes automatically. That helps us as well to help dads find the show. You can do that through your favorite listening app, whatever that is. And finally, review this podcast. Leave us a review, good or bad, wherever you listen. Those reviews also help other dads find the show. You can always learn more about what we're up to at manhoodjourney.org or fatheronpurpose.org. We will see you next week.
You've been dozing off to the Father on Purpose podcast featuring Kent Evans and Lawson Brown. Now, wake up. Head over to fatheronpurpose.org for more tools that can help you be a godly, intentional, and not completely horrible dad. Remember, you are not a father on accident, so go be a father on purpose.